I can't even tell if we're okay. There it goes. Hey guys, welcome to Three Deep South. This is a college football podcast brought to you from the great state of Arkansas. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties here, so I'm just trying to check out everything before we get too far into it. Today we're going to be talking about maybe some sleeper playoff teams. We're going to kind of go into the Shemar Stewart at Texas A&M situation. And I watched a lot of the SEC media today, so I might talk about that a little bit. Justin, how was your week, man?
Man, I mean, most of our fans or most of the people that watch us probably live in Arkansas or travel back and forth to Arkansas. So, I mean, it's about like everybody else's is, I think. It's hot, dude. I
Yeah.
mean, if you don't live here and you're planning on coming here and visiting, or don't come here in August. I think for like the next 2 weeks, I don't think it's supposed to be below 100 degrees. During the day, I mean, at night we could have humidity where it feels like it's 100 degrees all the way until like 10 o'clock at night. So, I mean, but other than that, man, I'm still walking around. I'm still living and breathing. So, I can't complain too much. I mean, we're closer to college football. So, the hotter it gets, it seems like it does suck. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but you just kind of have that feeling like college football is right around the corner. I think we're like 40-something days away. So, not too bad.
We're definitely closing in. A good sign most of the time is media days in the SEC or the Big Ten or the Big 12. That's a good sign that we're closing in on it for sure.
What about you,
Did
man?
you
How
see
was your
any?
week?
Um, my week was good. Could you not hear me that whole time?
No, I could hear you. I didn't mean to cut you off, but
Okay.
I just didn't want to forget to ask you how your
Oh
week
no,
was.
you're good. I was just making sure because I'm still trying to figure this whole thing out. No, my week was good. Can't even tell if it's still working.
I
No,
mean,
it's
I
working.
still
Okay.
I still got you on my end.
Yeah, sorry. I think my laptop's on the fritz. My week was good. There wasn't a lot to it really. Just working, getting through the week, getting ready for football.
I
Did you
got.
see anything that kind of piqued your interest in on social media? Maybe the Shamar Stewart stuff, and maybe something else.
I mean, I don't know. I think it was who came out and talked about it. I don't know. I don't really like getting into SEC media days because like that's not the conference that I like pertain to and like follow in depth. So like I'm not gonna like talk about it too much. But I think it was like Missouri, maybe. I think it was Missouri's head coach Drinkwitz talking about how tough the SEC is and how it's just ridiculously hard. Like they have like one of the easiest schedules in the SEC, and he's wanting to expand the playoffs to like 30 teams. And it's like, dude, you're an idiot. Like he's just saying that because he wasn't any good last year. So I mean, besides that, man, I mean, really the Stewart thing's kind of got me like, I feel like that's a big thing. And if I mean, for the people that don't know, so Shemar Stewart came from Texas A&M, freak athlete. Like he ranked in like the top 1 percentile of college athletes that are coming out to go to a pro sport. Like overall time, like this dude's an absolute like animal when it comes to off the field analytics, like 40 time jumping, run. I mean all of it. Dude's a freak, but he played at Texas A&M, but he did. I mean, he played a lot, but he didn't turn in good stats. Like I think he had 1.5 sacks over the last 3 seasons. Anyways, fast forward, he got drafted by the Bengals. Now he got drafted by the Bengals. Well, in his contract, they're trying to kind of like make it to where he doesn't have any guaranteed money if this, and that happen. So he was like, I'm not signing the contract. Well, this has been going on ever since he got drafted. So what is that, like 3 months? He went to practice for a little bit, practiced, and then left, and he hasn't been back. Well, he is practicing or like working out with Texas A&M. Well, he's trying to get like a waiver to forfeit him going to the Bengals and go play another year for Texas A&M. So, like, with that being said, like, that could, I mean, I know other sports do it, like baseball and basketball, they do it, but like, football's never done it. I mean, it could open up a whole can of worms that I just don't think, like, I don't think we're ready. I mean, I think it could honestly be good for college football, but I don't think the fans that like NFL and college football, I don't think they're going to like it that much.
And kind of what Mike Elko was saying earlier in his little press conference, he talked about he hadn't heard anything about the Shemar Stewart stuff. But let's say it is going on. You're right; it will change a lot. I am echoing a little bit, just let you
All
know.
right, I got you.
But what it could change is you could see a guy like a Shadur who his draft valuation was a lot higher than what he wound up going. Um, and then on top of that, you have like fringe fourth, fifth round guys that they have enough NIL money. Probably they don't have to go to the NFL, but if they go to the draft and it doesn't go the way they thought, you could see a lot of guys returning. But it also adds an element of like the transfer portal. Like if it stays where it is right now, spring and winter, you could see a guy that goes to the NFL, doesn't go what he likes, comes back, transfers. So like it adds a whole lot of elements to this that like I never would have thought possible in football. Um, I hope it doesn't happen for Arkansas State or like their sake, because I don't want to see Texas A&M with any more guys on defense that are NFL caliber. Um, I don't know. It's just a weird situation, really.
Well, I think it's really weird too because like there's not enough out about it to really like hone in on what it is, but there's enough out about it that like we have to talk about it. You know what I mean? Like not
Yeah.
just because like it's just something that could really change not just college, not just the NFL, but like all of college football. Like you said, like what happens if there's a guy like Shador where it's like, oh, he could go first round and then he starts sliding and then he's like, no, I'm going to come back to Colorado. Or what if there's a guy that gets picked up in the first round and then schools start calling, hey, we'll pay you because I mean fourth round guys, I don't think I mean they make decent money, but I don't think they make anything crazy. Like after about the first and second round, like your signing bonuses and stuff aren't that wild. Well, what if there's a guy like Quinn Ewers or somebody like that their school starts calling or another school starts calling and says, hey, if you come play with us, we just need you for 1 year. I mean, and all it takes is a team like trying to think like a TCU, somebody that was kind of good, but not really anymore. They're just like, hey, you know what? If you come here, we're going to pertain the whole offense around you. So you're going to put up gaudy numbers, and then you're going to get drafted higher. Because I don't know if they open it up, how can they force that kid to go back to the school that they left from? I mean, obviously that would be the ideal sense because you know the defense or you know the offense or whatever position you play, but you know, like take Haynes King for account. Like he's coming from Georgia Tech. Well, what happens if he goes in the draft, gets drafted in like the seventh round, and then somebody like TCU or Washington State says, "Hey, we'll give you $4 million just to come back. We're going to utilize your arm and possibly make your draft stock go up." Just something like that. Like those are things that people don't necessarily think about because it's like, oh, that'll never happen. Well, I mean, how far are we from that? Because every other sport does it.
Yeah, like in the MLB, they draft kids straight out of high school, and then they might not go to the MLB or to the minors, but they'll go to college and play for a little while. It's just, it's a complicated situation, honestly. That it's just a complicated situation that like if it is allowed, which I don't think it will be, just in the sense of like this is probably something that has to be settled in court or that the NCAA has to make a ruling on. And in general, the NCAA is not really hasty to get on top of these things normally. Um, so I don't imagine it's going to go his way. But as it pertains to the NFL, he can go this whole year without signing or playing or practicing for the Bengals and re-enter next year's draft and get drafted by anyone but the Bengals. So it definitely just adds a layer in general, just on every side of this situation. I don't know. I don't like it really. I do and I don't. Like I like it for the fact of like you could see a guy like Quinn Ewers. Like Quinn Ewers probably wasn't happy with his draft spot, um, but he has nowhere to go back to because essentially Arch Manning is going to be the guy at Texas. So you could see a guy like that go to Kentucky or something,
Yeah.
and it would be interesting to see. So that would be cool, but I just think it also adds an element of wildness to something that's already crazy every year. It just I don't know. It just it's just a lot of complications.
Yeah, it feels like we're playing a video game, really. I mean, it's weird. That's what I mean. Like, we kind of glossed over it, or people might feel like we glossed over it, but it's like, it's such a weird topic, and we don't know. Like, if we knew certain details, we could go on for an hour and talk about it. But like, we don't want to sit here and fill people's heads with something, and then 2 weeks from now we find out that it was complete opposite, and then we look like idiots.
Well, and like Mike Elko said that Mike Elko basically just wrote it off as he's going to sign. So I mean that could still happen.
Yeah.
So this might just be
But
something that's kind of.
you
like
ready
that.
to get into the topic, Mason? I'm kind of excited.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and start?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say that we talked a lot about what we just, Shemar Stewart and stuff like that, but what we're talking about today is like the sleeper teams. We're not going to go into, as much as me and Mason would love to, because it seems like every episode we talk about these two teams, as much as me and Mason would like to go into South Carolina and Oklahoma. Like, if you watch the show enough, you kind of know, like, those aren't sleeper teams for us. Your LSU's, your, Penn State's, your Ohio State's, your Oregon's, like, SMU is another one. Like, pretty much all the teams that made the playoffs last year, we're not going to talk about any of them. We're talking about the teams last year that went like 7-5, or some of them might even have went 5-7 or 6-6, and we feel, I wouldn't say highly on it. I'm not going to go out and bet that Baylor or Pitt makes the playoffs, but it's like you could see in a world to where, hey man, they could make the playoffs. So I just want to get off by saying that because we don't want people to get in the obviously comment whenever you want to, but we don't want to get to the end of the show and people be like, you don't think LSU is going to make the playoffs, or you don't think, Miami's going to. No, I don't think Miami or LSU is going to make the playoffs. But like that, this show has nothing to do with my opinion. It's just like these are sleeper teams that we think could make that jump this year from what they were last year. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, I'm going to start off with, if you know anything about college football, this is a sleeper team, but this is a high sleeper team just because of what they did in the transfer portal, and that's Texas Tech. They have a rich history, especially in the last 10 or 15 years. They've kind of been that run and gun style offense, but they went absolutely crazy in the transfer portal. I think they brought in the number one class. They spent astronomical amount of money. They have a lot of production returning. I think they have the second most production returning in the Big 12. So they have 70% on offense and 76% on defense, and that's a big thing, especially now. And they are a good team. They're coached well. They finished last year. They didn't finish last year bad, but they didn't finish good. They were 8-5 and 6-3 in conference, which the team that was. They didn't win the Big 12, but BYU, Iowa State, and Arizona State were all 11-3 and 11-2. So they weren't far off from the top of the Big 12. And you'll notice as me and Mason go through these teams, we're going to talk a lot about the Big 12 and we're going to talk a lot about the SEC because we kind of feel like the SEC and the Big 10 are kind of covered pretty well. And there's not many sleeper teams. As much as I like Iowa, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. As much as I like Indiana, they've already been talked about. Illinois is another one that's kind of already been talked about where it's yeah, they might make the playoffs, but we don't consider them sleepers. So Texas A&M, I love their head coach. I love their offense. I think they're going to be very high-powered this year just because they're returning a lot. I mean, their schedule. I wouldn't say that their schedule's hard, but they have some tough teams when it comes to Big 12 games. I would say some of their toughest games are. I mean, they play Utah, which nobody really knows what Utah is going to be. They lost a lot of players. They play Kansas State. I know you're going to go over Kansas State too, Mason. Kansas State's pretty good. BYU is going to be pretty good. I personally think BYU's overrated, but the public thinks that BYU is going to be pretty good. And then at the end of the season, they play West Virginia. I really like West Virginia this year. I don't have them as one of my sleeper teams because I don't like them as much as Texas Tech and other teams like that. But I think they're going to be a competitive team, and I think those are the type of games in the Big 12, especially like your Kansas States and your West Virginias, that are sneak-up games. Because if you know one thing about college football, I can't tell you when's the last time somebody went undefeated in the Big 12.
Oh, probably been. If I had to guess, I would maybe say one of the Baker, Oklahoma teams. Maybe. Oh, TCU went undefeated in the regular season.
You're
and
right.
They lost in the conference championship, but
yeah. But what I'm getting at is it wasn't like they just ran off with everything. Like there was a bunch of games in there that were close. So that's what I mean about the Big 12. You just don't ever know, and that's why me and Mason are going to pick a lot of these teams from the Big 12 or the ACC is because you don't know. So like I said, don't be surprised if you look at the end of the season and Texas Tech is 11-1 playing in the Big 12 championship game.
Well, and like BYU that you were talking about, someone in our chat brought up a good point. They did lose their quarterback. I'm sure people have seen the memes and everything about him getting kicked out of BYU for that premarital sex. So I assume BYU is probably going to.
Oh my goodness! What? You don't think everybody in that college is having sex?
Maybe not at BYU.
Come on now, bro.
I mean, I would assume they probably are, but
I mean, I guess it wasn't published to the world, but I don't know. I guess I gotta stand on business, but I don't know. The swim team, the lacrosse team, all of it.
Right.
But yeah, BYU lost their quarterback, so that's one more game that Texas Tech doesn't. I mean,
yeah.
I don't even think they play them, but that's one less team that you have to worry about at the end of the season. Is what I'm getting at with Texas or with BYU. They did play BYU November 8th, so
yeah. Well, and to me, the Big 12, any team that comes out of the Big 12 is kind of going to be a sleeper. Even Arizona State, in my opinion, is going to be a sleeper. I know they made it last year and they won the conference, but it's just such a volatile conference. You really never know. There's never been a time in my life, besides whenever Oklahoma was real good, but even some of those Oklahoma years that I've been able to pin down who I think is going to win the Big 12 in any given year. And even if you think you know what's going to happen in the Big 12, it almost never happens that way. So any team that comes out of that conference, to me, is going to be kind of a sleeper. But the team that I'm kind of looking at, or the couple of teams that I'm really looking at in that conference, you already talked about Texas Tech. They are obviously big spenders, and they got a lot of talent now. But I think Kansas State is a potential big player in that conference. They're bringing back their quarterback. And this is a team and a coach that has made quarterbacks that have a similar skill set look really good, like Will Howard. He won the national championship with Ohio State, but before that, he was a really good quarterback for Kansas State. Now they have Avery Johnson. It's going to be his second year. He was a little turnover prone last year, but like you were kind of talking about, their schedule isn't really that crazy either. I had it pulled up, but they play Iowa State. That's kind of a big one. Week 1 in Dublin. That one, to me, that's another team that I was going to talk about is going to be kind of like that's going to be a good team too in the Big 12. And that game is in Dublin, week 0. Like, it's going to be a weird one, but it's going to have a lot of implications to me beyond week 0. And it's just a weird place. They play Kansas, or they play TCU at home in October. TCU kind of surged last year at the end of the year. Now they weren't like gonna win the conference or be close to the playoff, but they looked a lot better. So if they can carry that momentum, TCU could be a better team. They go to Arizona State, the defending champions, October 18th. So that's going to be a big one too. Arizona State's returning their quarterback Sam Levitt. Now they are losing Cam Scattaboo. So I do think Arizona State's going to take a hit, but that's a big game for. Never mind. I'm looking at Texas Tech schedule, or I was looking. I have a bunch of schedules pulled up. I had Texas Tech schedules pulled up. Texas Tech plays at Arizona State. That'll probably be the biggest game of their thing. But when I was really looking at was Texas Tech at Kansas State. I'm sorry, November 1st. That one will be a huge one. If Kansas State wins that game early against Iowa State and they make it to November and they're in a spot, that could be a game that propels one of those teams to the conference championship. I feel like the winner of Texas Tech at Kansas State will probably take one of those spots. It could be a rematch later on, but I think in that spot, it kind of guarantees one of those teams, unless the wheels fall off for them. But yeah, I like Avery Johnson a lot. They brought in a lot of transfers on their offensive side. I like their coach. They don't have Bill Snyder anymore. They got that Kleeman guy. And if they can clean up the turnovers, they're going to be a team that I think is going to surprise a lot of people. And you could see Kansas State in the playoff later in the year. Who was another team you kind of talked about?
I'm going to leave the I guess the sleepiest of sleepers. I guess that's what you can call them. I'll leave them for last. It's kind of weird this team being in the Big Ten because I kind of always liked them. But like Washington is one that kind of stands out to me. Like their quarterback's kind of nasty. If you go look up his stats from last year, let me pull him up. Damon Williams. Mm-hmm. I mean, he played a few games last year. I don't know. I think he didn't play very many. He played 1, 2, 3, 4. He played 5 of the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, he played 5 games at the end of the season. And I mean, he had almost 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 1 interception with an 84 QBR. So I mean, he was kind of lighting stuff up. You know what I mean? So. With that being said, like their schedule is pretty. Man, it's not hard. They start off with Colorado State, and then they have another no name. Then they go to Washington State, which is a rivalry game, and then they do play the Buckeyes, but it's at home. They play at Michigan, and then they have Iowa at home, and then they have Oregon at home at the end of the season. So the only real big game that they have that's on the road is Michigan. And I mean, that's going to be a tough place to play. But, like, in the Big Ten, traveling time zones, you have Ohio State traveling a time zone, Illinois traveling a time zone, and then you have Oregon. But they're not traveling a time zone, obviously, but it's still at home. And if you really look into, like, people that talk about college football, a lot of people are real high on Washington, and it's a very tough place to go play. I mean, I think the Buckeyes are probably going to beat them, and then Oregon or Illinois, they could. But the thing is, when you're in one of these big conferences, you can't afford to lose 2 games. So, and depending on how the season rolls out, like I wouldn't say that you can afford to lose 3, but you can. I mean, if Washington beats Ohio State and then loses to Michigan, Illinois, and Oregon, like, I mean, they have a big win on their schedule. Or if they lose to Ohio State, Michigan, and Iowa, or Illinois, but then beat Oregon, it's like one of those things to where you're just going to have to see how it plays out at the end of the season. But if they go 2-2 against Ohio State, Michigan, Illinois, and Oregon, well, they only have 2 losses. Indiana made it last year, and Ohio State made it last year, and Penn State made it last year, and they all had 2 losses. Now, granted, Penn State's loss came in the Big Ten championship game, but still, those are 2 loss teams that made it to the college football playoffs, and I think Washington could be that next team. I like what they're doing up there. Coming off their first year after losing Kalen DeBoer, they kind of had some struggles, but I wouldn't say that it was astronomical. It was kind of like anybody just expected them to have regular struggles. They beat Michigan. They had a close game with USC and ended up pulling that one out. They did have some bad losses, like they lost to Indiana 31-17 and lost to Oregon 49-21. But you could tell when they were playing, they were making jumps to become better. It wasn't like they were, dogs that were just laying down. So I think Washington has a real shot at doing something this year, especially like I said, because their schedule isn't that hard. And a lot of their hard games that they play are at home. They play at Michigan. That's their only big game that they have. That's an away game.
Yeah, and like you were talking about, they probably can afford to lose a couple of those games, but I don't know enough about Washington, I guess. But do you think that if they lose the 2 biggest ones out of that, what did you say they play? Do they play Ohio State? Is that what you said?
Yeah, they play Ohio State. They play Michigan. They play Illinois, and they play Oregon.
So if they split those, but they only beat Illinois and Michigan, do you think that's enough? Like,
I mean, here's the thing: is I think it's enough. I mean, now in my eyes, do I think it's enough? It really depends on how the college football playoff or how the college football regular season plays out. If it's like it was last year, where you have a lot of SEC teams that lost 3 games, yeah, it's enough. But if you have 6 SEC teams versus Washington that all have 2 losses, it's going to be like one of those things like you got to pick resumes. And I'm sure there's going to be 1 or 2 SEC teams that have a better resume, but I mean, if they go 2-2 in those games, Michigan's going to be a decent football team this year. I mean, you think they're going to be pretty good. I can't sit here and say that they're going to be pretty good, but if Underwood turns out to be a decent quarterback, I mean, yeah, they have a lot of returning production. They could be a top 15 team. So if Washington loses to Ohio State, that could be a top 5 team, they beat Michigan, which is a top 15 team. They beat Illinois, which is a top 15 team, and then they lose to Oregon, which is a top 10 team. Like, they have 2 top 15 wins on their schedule, and their only 2 losses are to top 5 and top 10 Ohio State and Oregon. So it's like one of those things. It's like, I mean, why wouldn't it be enough?
That's fair. I could see that. It's a good question. The team I was kind of looking at, and it's mainly because of their schedule. The ACC and the Big 12, I think they're both going to be kind of battling to see who's going to be the one bid league. But a team that I was looking at out of the ACC was Georgia Tech. Now they are returning quite a bit, but they're returning a lot from a 7-6 squad, 2 7-6 squads in a row. They did take Georgia to a couple overtimes last year. They had some pretty big wins, but they had some unexpected losses. Now, no one could have predicted Syracuse to rise like they did last year, but they lost to teams like Syracuse, right after big wins. So it was just an up and down year. But outside of, I'll just read the schedule. Week 1, Georgia Tech goes to Colorado, so that'll be a tough one probably. Then they play an FCS team. Week 3, they play Clemson at home, and then after that, it's Temple, Wake Forest, Virginia Tech, Duke, Syracuse, who I think is going to regress a little bit, NC State, Boston College, Pittsburgh, and then Georgia. So, in between Georgia and Clemson, I'm not saying that they're good enough that they're just going to be able to roll the ball out there and win the game just off of name brand or their talent or anything. But in between Georgia and Clemson, they have, what would that be? 6, 7 winnable games, like all in a row. And if they lose, if they beat, they got to beat Colorado for one, because I don't think they're going to beat Clemson or Georgia. But if they beat Colorado and then they only lose to Clemson and Georgia, they set themselves up to go to the ACC championship probably, or maybe be a 10-2 at large with no real crazy wins, because they got to put somebody in. And last year you saw an SMU make it and an Indiana make it that didn't beat anyone. So it's just kind of like a schedule thing. I mean, they are returning a lot, and they come with a play style that I really enjoy watching. I mean, they use their quarterback in the run game a lot. They play fast defense. I like their coach a lot. I can't think of his name right now. But it's just kind of a situation that I could see them, you looking at them the week before they play Georgia, and you're like, holy cow, this team is 9-1 or whatever, or 10-1. Like, what? And being in a playoff, contention type of deal. That's all I really got on them.
Well, they do have – so they have the second most returning production in the ACC, and that 18th most returning production in all of college football. 68% of that's on the offensive side, and 62% of that's on the defensive side. And with that, like, their defense was good last year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, their defense and the style of play gave teams fits. And in the ACC, in a conference that doesn't really have that many teams, I mean, you have Clemson that we all think, or America pretty much thinks, like, they're in the ACC championship game already, as long as they don't mess something up. So, with that being said, then you have, 15 or however many schools are in that conference, other schools that are all fighting for one spot. And I have another team that you kind of said that Georgia Tech doesn't really play anybody. I'm kind of high on Pitt to be a little sleeper team. So talking about returning production, they're fourth. They have 64% returning production, and that's 33 overall in all of college football. They have 66 on offense and 61 on defense, so very similar to Georgia Tech. And their schedule really helps them out. They play nobody. They go to West Virginia, which is always kind of a wild environment to go to. And then
they host too.
Yeah, they host Louisville. They host Boston College. They go to Florida State, which I don't think that's that big of a deal. They go to Syracuse. Now, if you remember last year when they played Syracuse, they beat them pretty bad, but that was because there was like 4 pick sixes in like the first 2 minutes of the game, it seemed like. So there's probably going to be a little revenge there, and that's in a dome. So, it's probably going to be pretty loud. Other than that, they do play Georgia Tech. I feel like that could be one of those fun games to watch to where, who knows, Pitt and Georgia Tech could be top 15 teams, 9-1 or whatever towards the end of the season, and you're like, holy crap. Like, this is going to be a good game. Like, these are big-time college football games that nobody expected to happen at the beginning of the season. Now, right before Georgia Tech, they do play Notre Dame, but they get Notre Dame at home, which is a big deal because nobody wants to go into South Bend. So, I mean, like you said, how many losable games? Because in the ACC, all they have to do is go to the ACC championship and compete against Clemson. If Clemson's undefeated, could they choke away that game? You know what I mean? And then that gives, a team like Pitt that if they make it, kind of a way in to the college football playoffs. I don't really see a game that is like, oh, yeah, they would definitely lose that game. I can't sit here and tell you that they're for sure losing to West Virginia. Can't sit here and tell you that they're for sure losing to Georgia Tech or Miami. The only team on there that we can both agree they're probably going to lose to Notre Dame.
And that's not a conference game. So
exactly. Really so it's like one of those things. And here's my next question, Mason, because this schedule and the way that we kind of talk about the ACC kind of really feels like, a good time to bring this up. So last year, Ohio State won the national championship. They didn't even go to the Big Ten championship game. With that being said, like, do you feel like championship games, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, ACC, do you feel like there's still a priority on them, or do you feel like they don't really care? Just yes or no answer, because I'm going to kind of lean into something else.
If they don't change the format, no, they don't matter.
Okay, so here's my question. Teams in the ACC make significantly more money if more teams go to the ACC, to the college football playoffs, out of their conference, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So, are we going to get into these scenarios in the not so much the Big Ten and the SEC, but in the ACC and the Big 12? Say Penn State's, or not Penn State, sorry. Say Clemson's undefeated, they're ranked top 5. Pitt or Georgia Tech or somebody like that, they might be 9-2 in like the 20th position because they haven't lost to Notre Dame, and then they might have another conference loss, but they figured out a way to get into the conference, championship game. Could you see a thing to where you deal with a little bit of oops, he accidentally scored a touchdown to let them win type thing to get 2 teams out of the ACC or get 2 teams out of the Big 12 to make it to where they have 2 teams instead of just 1? Because if Clemson wins out and you have a team like Georgia Tech or Pitt and they have 2 losses or even 3 losses as a runner-up in the in the ACC or Big 12, like, they're not making it. The only way they would make it is if they win. So it's like, could you see that coming up in the near future, especially when money is such a big deal for these college football programs?
I would like to say no, but about last year, I'll just bring up last year because that's the only example I got. Clemson beats SMU. That was probably the only way Clemson was making it, and Clemson wins the game. I didn't expect SMU to make it, and then they made it. So I'm gonna say if you flip the roles, right, and SMU, if SMU was at risk of being knocked out, because they didn't have a very impressive resume, right?
Yeah.
And the committee didn't want to punish them for playing in a conference championship game. If you keep that up, then yeah, I could 100% see that happening, where a team like Clemson maybe fumbles and Kate Klubnik has a terrible game out of nowhere, and Georgia Tech or Pitt makes it off of that. Would I would I like that to happen, or do I want to believe that that'll happen? No, I don't want to believe it. But yes, I could see that very well. I almost think now this is the conspiracy theorist in me. I almost think that year that Georgia and Alabama made it, I almost think Georgia lost on purpose, because there's no way. No. Georgia got knocked out, but I almost think Greg Sankey made the call to put Saban in the playoff, and he thought Georgia was going to make it too instead of Washington, and that's just not what happened. But yeah, I definitely could see that happen, and I almost think it already has happened with the SEC. I think they've done it. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Another team that I was kind of looking at, they're not in the ACC, they're in the Big 12, and I mentioned them already, is Iowa State. They're returning Rocco Becht. They had a really fun year last year. They were they weren't like a high flying offense, but they were pretty reliable. Their defense was just bad enough and just good enough that they had a ton of close games, and it's kind of been the MO for Matt Campbell up there. So they play a schedule that isn't that bad to me either. Week 1, they do go to Dublin, and they play Kansas State. That game I feel like will say a lot. I think that game's crazy week 0. I really think it's going to be crazy. Then they play Iowa State at home. That one's always weird. And then after that, it's a lot of teams that I'm not really high on in the Big 12. They play Arizona, who I don't think is very good. They play Cincinnati, who hasn't been really good. They play Colorado. I really don't know what to expect out of Colorado, but I don't expect them to be that good. BYU just lost their quarterback. I don't think they're going to be great. They do play Arizona State, but they get that game at home, and it's in November. Iowa's freezing cold in November. Arizona is probably 80 degrees in November. So I just and Arizona State kept Iowa State out of the playoff last year. Whenever they beat them in the conference championship, beat them like a drum. I think that's a lot of revenge on that one. And then they played TCU, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. So they are returning their quarterback. I'm really big on returning quarterbacks. If you've paid attention to a lot of what I've talked about, every team I've been big on is returning their quarterback. So I just think it's a situation where they're returning enough pieces. They have a workable schedule. And whenever they do play the big dogs, they get them at home and they get them like in the freezing cold. So I just think that spells pretty workable schedule, and I think it spells Iowa State playing in Dallas in the conference championship. Now, as far as will they win it, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I thought they were going to win it last year, and they got skull drug. It was so embarrassing. But yeah, I could see them making the playoff and being a sleeper. I don't think it'll be because they're one of the 12 best teams, but I just think that they're in a situation where you could see them making it and it being kind of an Arizona State situation last year. That's all I got on them, though. I didn't really look into them at all.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I like Iowa State. I just think they are returning production. They're 44th in the or 41st in the country, 61%, 65 on offense, 57 on defense. Obviously, everybody's bringing stuff in the transfer portal, but I like to go off returning production because, like, that shows how many people stayed. So they're kind of low in the Big 12. My next team is a Big 12 team too. They don't play each other, but I think Iowa State's kind of one of those teams where the 12-team playoff probably helps them out the most because they're just consistently good. I really, really like their head coach.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a great head coach. He kind of flies under the radar because he's at Iowa State, but I can't sit here and tell you why he hasn't made the playoffs, honestly. Or not made the playoffs, like made a jump to a bigger school. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a good question, honestly.
Who's
your next team?
My next team, and like at first I thought it was like a long shot, but the more that I like sit here and I look into them as you're talking about your teams, I really like the Baylor Bears.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, okay, like I just talked about returning production, they're third most in the Big 12. 73%, 70% on offense, and 76% on defense. Returning production. They have 156 snaps recorded as starters. They're sixth in America in returning production. And their schedule is not that hard. They do start out with Auburn, but they have Auburn at home, which helps. So they start off with Auburn, and then they have SMU. And they do play Arizona State, but other than that, like they play Kansas State. And at the end of the season, it's very front-loaded. Right. So it's kind of one of those things. And, like, the thing is like, if they lose to Auburn and they lose to SMU, say they lose both those games, but then they go undefeated, you could still see them in the Big 12 championship game. So their two biggest games are out of conference games. I don't know why they scheduled them like that, but whatever. So yeah, they play Auburn, and then they play SMU, and then they play Samford, not Stanford, Samford, no name. Then they play Arizona State, good team. Then they play Oklahoma State, trash. Kansas State, pretty decent. TCU, Cincinnati, UCF, Utah, Arizona, and then Houston at the end of the season. So, like, I don't really see, I mean, besides Arizona State, like, there's not another Big 12 team that I could see them losing to. I mean, I'm not I don't want to say this. I'm not a betting man, but if you are and you have $10 laying around, just 10. I wouldn't do any more than 10. If you bet them to make the playoffs, it's a plus 550 odds. So that you win $60 off your $10 bet. And then if you select Pitt, the last team I talked about to make the playoffs, if you bet $10, you win 180. If you parlay them together, I'm sure it's like ridiculous. I don't know. Yeah, it says I can't parlay them together to give you odds, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you, like I said, if you bet, we talked about it before. We'll probably have another episode about it. But those are just some sleeper teams that I like. There's probably some more out there. I didn't really dive too deep into like the non-Power Four schools because there's so many schools out there, and it's. I mean, we have a hard enough time keeping up with recruiting and transfer portal in the big time schools. I couldn't imagine telling you anything about the non-Power Four schools. And like, who would have thought that Ashton Genty would have done that for Boise State last year? So it's so hard to calculate and see what those schools are going to be. I would say those are probably my biggest sleepers. You got Baylor, Purdue, Washington, and Texas Tech. Those are probably my
Purdue.
four.
Not Purdue. Pitt.
Sorry, no, not Purdue. Pitt. Pittsburgh Panthers.
Purdue might actually be sleeping this year. They're gonna.
If I was a Purdue fan this year, I'd crank down some melatonin and some NyQuil and just sleep. Be like a Baylor Bear and go ahead and hibernate through football season.
Yeah, I just think it's a typical Big 12 year. I mean, none of the teams we talked about are probably going to make the conference championship. It's probably going to be Oklahoma State and BYU or something weird that we never would have expected. And any team that comes out of that conference is a sleeper, like we said. I mean, it's just a weird conference. And the ACC is very similar. The ACC has Clemson and everybody else. Yeah, you could say Miami, but I'm not buying into the Miami hype.
Make it
and win.
Not Miami.
I would almost bet Miami doesn't make the conference championship. I would bet that. So,
hey Mason, do you have any more teams or no?
No, that's all I got.
All right, so here's my next thing, and if you don't have one off the top of your head, I only have one off the top of my head because I was thinking about it today. Do you have a team that you feel like is overrated that everybody thinks is going to make the playoffs but might not? And don't say Ohio State just to troll me. Pick a different one.
Okay. I mean, I can't lie. I would not be surprised if Ohio State has a down year, but to pick a different one, I would say like an Oregon. I think Oregon, and it's going to be the same reason why I would say Ohio State needs to be kind of. I wouldn't be surprised. Is I'm about to never mind. They lost a lot, and they're not returning a quarterback, which I'm big on. They play a tough schedule, and they've been good for so long that everyone expects them to kind of always be good. Oregon, and they play in a cool stadium, and they wear all the cool uniforms, and it just would not be surprising if they had a fall off year, and you didn't see them playing in December, December, January. It just would not be surprising to me at all.
Yeah. Now, I agree, and I could see Ohio State too. Like, I was just messing with you. Like, if you're not an Ohio State fan, you could very well see them having a down year. I just know so much about the program that I don't think they would, but I think if you're a fan, I don't think you're going to say that your team's going to have a down year openly. The team I'm about to talk about, it could piss somebody off in the chat if he's in the chat. I don't know if he is. He might be, might not be. I don't care because I'm going to tell it how it is. This team is one that I feel like everybody has already shooed into the playoffs. They think they're in. They think that they're returning a lot. They really like this head coach. They love the underdog story, but they're not so much underdogs anymore. Now, like I said, this kind of goes back to our sleeper teams. I'm not going to put money on this. If somebody wants to send me money, I'll put the money on it. But I'm not going to put money on this. It's just I have that weird feeling about this team specifically. I have a weird feeling that Notre Dame might not make the playoff. Now, the reason I say that, they start off with Miami. Me and you are both down on Miami. We don't think they're going to be very good. But then they have Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M is going to be a pretty good team. Now, it's at South Bend, so, that's still going to be kind of tough. But I think Notre Dame's going to have a lot to prove from what from what happened to them last year. So they have Texas A&M. Then they play Purdue, which is a nobody. Now, Mason, when I say this, I want you to take a deep breath, listen to what I say, and don't start freaking out and calling the Hogs. I could see a world, as low as I am on the Hogs, I could see a world where the Hogs play their best game against Notre Dame and Notre Dame plays their worst game against the Hogs. And it's another one of those Texas things. And once again, you're going to keep Sam Pittman in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and it's going to piss you off. But I could see it happening. In this case scenario, I'm going to say it does happen. So that would be Notre Dame already having 2 losses. And then they have USC, which USC is at home, but I'm really high on USC this year. I think they're going to be halfway decent. I think their quarterback's going to be good. I don't think they're going to be some world beater team that's going to light the world on fire. I think Lincoln Riley hired the right defensive coordinator. They're making steps. I feel like Lincoln Riley is learning what West Coast football feels like. I'm not saying they're going to go in there and beat them, but I think they could. So with just those teams, that's 3 losses right there. I'm not saying that they're guaranteed to lose those games. What I'm saying is I could see a world to where they lose those games. That's just personal. That's just how I feel. I think out of because we have like 4 or 5 teams. You got Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Notre Dame, Texas, Georgia, Alabama. Those 7 teams, pretty much, if you talk to a group of people, at least half of them are going to think those 7 teams are guaranteed to be in. I think Notre Dame, out of that group, maybe besides Georgia, out of that group would be the team that I look at. I'm like, yeah, dude, I could see a world where they don't make it to the college football playoffs just because they're not in a conference.
Well, and I didn't think they should make it last year, personally.
Yeah.
They lost to NIU, and they made it. And they comfortably made it. They hosted a playoff game. So I think it's more of, if they lose 2 games, I don't see them making the playoff. I don't care if it's USC and Miami. If it's the first and the last game, I don't care. If they lose 2 games, they're not making the playoff, in my opinion. So yeah, and if they lose 1 game, I don't. If they only lose 1 game, oh, there you are. You finally popped up. That's so weird. Sorry, guys. But anyways, I think if Notre Dame loses 2 games, there's no shot they make the playoff. And they play 4 losable games, in my opinion. I know Arkansas isn't. I got a whole Arkansas tangent that I'll spare everybody from today. But if they lose 2 games, they're not making the playoffs. I can 100% see that. I would say another team that, I know I've said they're going to win the national championship, but like if Clemson slips up, they lose to LSU, and then they lose a conference championship game. I don't see a world where a non-conference champion Clemson makes it if they don't win that game against LSU. So, like, there's a lot of weird things in that, Penn State.
Mason, the more we do this podcast, and I'm kind of really like 75-25 on it. Like, I don't want it to happen because it means that Ohio State's going to lose a game they shouldn't, and it's going to be, like, wild that they lose the game. But the more we dig deep into college football this year, like, I feel like we could really be on the heel or on the toes possibly stepping on them by season and looking back on this season and be like, holy crap, like that was crazy. We could see another 2007 season this year.
And what that opens up is for a team like Texas A&M, as much as I hate to say it, or like a Penn State or someone weird to be in the national championship is just what that opens up.
Yeah, it's what, like, the more I look into college football, like, you think about it. We've talked about it before. Most of the quarterbacks that are returning to programs that aren't like established, if that makes sense, or they're coached by coaches that we feel like have choked away games, and all the coaches that have won national championships or been in big time, national championship games, they all don't have quarterbacks. And you're dealing with so much parity in college football, like it could get real weird around week 7 to 10, and you look back and you're like, there's not an undefeated team in the nation. There's not a one-loss team in the nation, and there's only two-loss teams in the nation. Like, what do we do? What do we do at that point? And I want that just for college football. I don't want that as an Ohio State thing.
I would love it. I want the extra strain on the committee. I think they take the easy cop out too often, and I hope they get a year where they don't know who to put in.
I agree.
That would be music to my ears. But that's all I got for today. I'm a little hungry. I haven't eaten dinner yet. Do you want to do our little outro, Justin? Thank everybody and everything.
Yeah, man. That's all I got too. If you like and subscribe, leave us a comment too. It kind of boosts us up the algorithm. We're trying to grow. As hot as it is outside, I'm kind of ready to quit my day job. I think Mason is too. So if you could give us a like and a subscribe and turn your bell notifications on, because here in probably the next 3 or 4 weeks, me and Mason are going to start doing 2 shows a week. We're going to do a reaction show on Sunday, which will be after the games, so you can kind of tune in and watch that live or watch it throughout the week. But then we're also going to do another show probably the same time as we're doing this one, Thursday night, and we're going to talk about what's going on the next week in college football. Big games. We're probably always going to talk about Arkansas and Ohio State, but like if Ohio State's playing Akron, we're not going to talk about them that much. I love Ohio State, but we're not really going to talk about them. We're going to talk about like a Texas Tech versus Baylor, or games that pertain to each week. So if you know somebody that's just a college football fan in general, let them know. Talk about us. Put our name out there. Go follow us on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. We try to post a lot on TikTok. And like I said, turn your bell notifications on our channel on YouTube, because like today we had technical difficulties and we came on late. Well, that doesn't mean we're just not doing a show. We're gonna come on. It's just it helps you not have to sit there and stay on our channel and refresh. And if you're doing something, riding in a car, listening to music, like it shows you when we're on. So just like and subscribe and turn your bells on. And if you have any feedback in the comments, let us know. And we go back and watch the videos ourselves. So we'll read some comments from previous videos and talk about them in the next video. So, help us out so we can help you out, learn better about college football and know more about college football. We hope to kind of be that next YouTube show that you turn on at 7:30 in the morning on a Saturday while you drink your coffee and you eat your eggs and you listen to 2 rednecks talk about college football. Other than that, man, that's all we got. Y'all be careful. Don't get too hot. And if you have any questions, let us know.
Have a good week, guys. We will see y'all next time. Pretty soon we're going to do our conference predictions. Maybe not next week, but first week of August probably. Appreciate it. Everyone have a good week.